Hi folks, it's Chris, the founder of Innerfit, and today, in partnership with London Tech Week and Future of Work, talking with you about habits. Such a big topic, such a big topic. You realise very quickly you can have all the knowledge in the world about movement, nutrition, mindset, but really it all comes down to habit change. The words I've probably heard the most in the last 5 years working with people one-to-one through over 500 one-to-one consultations and groups of sessions as well is the words, I know what I need to do, I just don't do it. If only it were that simple. I think the word just there is a very interesting one, and we'll explore that in a little second. So today's a 15-minute session. We're going to just cover off a couple of frameworks for helping you think about habits, understand them and how to change, and also share practical steps towards the end which are actually going to help you intercept a habit loop if you've got one whilst working remotely at the moment that you want to change. Because frankly, it sounds like a lot of us have probably done that. We're in a new working remotely, working from home environment, and new little habits, maybe not desirable ones, maybe not the most healthy ones, might have just started to surface. What is a habit? A lot of definitions flying around. If you look at the literature, if you talk to people, one I really like is a choice that we once made and then continue to make, perhaps without thinking about it, often day to day. So it once was a choice. It's something that we now repeat daily even, and we don't even really think about it. It's like when you get in the car, the cue is to sit down there and put on the seatbelt, and then you go and drive. You don't even think about putting that seatbelt on now because you've done it so many times. But when you first did it, it was a conscious choice. So firstly, starting off with that definition then of a habit, we're thinking about how long it can take to form a habit. How long do you think? It's actually a bit of a trick question. It can take anything from 18 to 254 days according to one research paper. A lot of the time we think about it as being 30 days or 66 days, answers that often come up. It massively depends on the complexity of the task. So if you've got a really simple habit that you want to change, you're more towards the lower end of the spectrum. If it's more complex and it's about changing a behavior that's really ingrained in your lifestyle and linked to so many different things, that sits towards the more complex side. So on the simple end of the spectrum, it might be that you want to add one piece of fruit to your diet in the week, and you can do that on a Monday morning by just remembering to put the apple on the desk. Towards the more complex side, it might be smoking, for instance, comes to mind. It's really ingrained, if you're a heavy smoker, into finishing lunch, into that 3 p.m. break, into that evening socializing with a drink, that kind of thing. So how long can it take? It really can take a mix of days and effort. And on that point, it's worth thinking about how to do that. The analogy of a kind of rocket ship. So most of the fuel when a ship is taking off is used at the beginning. And it's the same for habits. A lot of the effort has to go in at the start, and then once you're in orbit, things start to get a little bit easier. So all of that context set on habits, what they are, how long they take to change. Do you actually want to make a new choice? Do you want to make a change? I don't just say that lightly as well. It's really worth thinking about how much you want to make a certain change, because if the effort and belief and desire isn't there in the first place, it's not worth it. It's not going to be worth making that choice and then sustaining the effort to launch that rocket ship and make that habit change happen. So again, maybe hit pause on this video, 30 seconds, have a little think about what change could I make, what change do I want to make, and how much do I want it? And if you have a think about those questions, we'll come back in a second, hit play, and resume starting to talk about some frameworks for making that happen. Framework number one, and you might well have heard of this, is links to a guy called Steve Peters, who's written a book called The Chimp Paradox. Fantastic book, and obviously the brain is complex and we need to simplify it down. And in speaking with people over the last few years, this one always seems to resonate. And I think that's because it's quite fun and it's also very useful. So Steve Peters basically breaks down the brain into 3 sections. 1 is your human, 2 is your chimp, 3 is your computer. So your human is what we think about as you. It's the rational, slightly slower side of the brain that likes to plan and it likes logic, and it knows that healthy choices are conducive to a long life, a healthy life, higher life expectancy, all that kind of stuff. We know that as our human. Second part is our chimp. And it's important to note that Steve Peters describes, we are not in control of the nature of our chimp, but we are responsible for managing it. So our chimp is our emotional side of the brain. It's the piece that says, I want that bit of chocolate, I didn't sleep well last night, I deserve to skip the gym or not exercise or go for a walk today. And working remotely and working from home, it might be that our chimp is a little bit more active than in normal life. So managing the chimp is key. Setting your plan for the human is the foundation as well. And then the third piece of the puzzle is what is described as our computer. It's where habits are kind of hard-coded and automatically we complete behaviors based on the behaviors of our chimp and our human. So if our chimp is in control of our life a lot of the time, our computer is automatically going to deliver behaviors that our chimp has decided on. If our human with our plan is in charge a lot of the time, our automatic behaviors are going to be easier and more in line with the human's behaviors, if that makes sense. So really, really useful to think about getting that human in control as much as possible, and it gets easier from there. And this point of neuroplasticity comes up, and a lot more research has been done in recent years on literally rewiring our brain. You can change the neural pathways in our brain and the connections and messages that are sent through training. How often do you train your brain? Maybe not enough. Most of us think about physical activity and training in that way, but we're not consciously thinking about rewiring our brain chemistry. So that's one framework for behavior change, really, really helpful at a high level. And then let's bring it down to specifics. So the second framework I'd love to share with you guys today is by a guy called Charles Duhigg, and it's taken from a book called The Power of Habit, and separates into 3 sections. So specifically, if we're thinking about an action, again, maybe worth hitting pause right now and staying 30 seconds. What is the one specific habit, the loop, that I want to intercept? For some people it might be that you want to get out for a walk and get a bit more movement in. For others it might be having a healthy snack mid-afternoon. What is that habit loop that you want to intercept? With that in mind, we can think about habit loops as comprising 3 sections. 1 is our cue, 2 is our routine, and 3 is our reward. This is where it gets interesting because we've got a lot more cues whilst working remotely. We're in a different environment, and if you've read about the research on habit change, environment can be a huge, huge factor. So cues, what time is it? Who are you with? Where are you? How are you feeling? All of these types of questions. So it might be that you are surrounded by a certain group of people who spark a certain behavior. If it's 3 p.m, what time is it? It might be that you're getting that energy dip in the afternoon, and that's when you're craving that sugary snack or that caffeine. How are you feeling? Maybe you just have natural waves in energy through the day, and you can associate a particular habit or behavior with that energy state. So that's our cue. And in one recent example that came up for someone I was talking with, they realized their cue was seeing the laptop and the phone on the desk. So laptop and phone on the desk essentially then led to the routine of looking, checking the inbox and firing out a few emails. So the second piece of that habit loop structure that Charles Duhigg has shared is routine. What is the action that you are actually taking place, or what is the behavior you're doing, like eating? It could be smoking, it could be sitting down, it could be staying in bed for an extra hour. Whatever that routine is, it's worth thinking about what you're actually craving, because that links to our third piece of the puzzle, which is the reward. And that reward, it could be that sugar high from that snack. It could be that sense of satisfaction you get from firing out those emails and replying to someone late at night because you've seen the cue of the phone and the laptop. Your routine is to actually go and do some work on that, and then the reward is that sense of, okay, finished now, done for the day, let's leave it there. So that habit loop, cue, routine, reward. Let's get really, really practical and specific now. So as Charles Duhigg explains, first stage is actually realizing and acknowledging these 3 areas in your life. So again, encourage you to hit stop, pause on the video, just with a pen and paper, write down the words cue, routine and reward, and have a little think about the change you want to make, the habit loop that you're in, and just write down each of those 3 things. Let's look at that cue, routine, reward, and we can do a few things here. We can remove the cue. So in the example of the laptop and the phone, can you hide them? Can you put them somewhere else so you're not seeing them? Immediately just removes the cue altogether, so that habit loop doesn't happen. You can also simply shift the routine. So if you do see those 2 things, is there a different behavior that you could replace it with? You look into the detail on habit research. It's really hard to unlearn a particular habit. The way our brain works is more that we overwrite existing behaviors with new ones. So when you hear, or maybe in the past you've thought about, oh, how can I cut this out? How can I cut alcohol? How can I cut sugar? Really difficult to do, because our brain, if we say no, you can't have that, wants it even more. And so adding in a new routine, adding in different action can be a really, really effective way of addressing that. And lastly, experimenting with the reward that you're giving yourself. What do you really want from that behavior? If at 3 p.m. you're grabbing that snack, I keep going back to it, but working remotely I think it's a relevant one. If the fridge is right there and you're going for that snack, what are you actually looking for at that time? Are you looking for a sugar high, or are you just looking for a little break? The coffee meeting or the water cooler exchange which used to happen, and just a 5 or 10 minute break and socializing, which got you out of that work mindset. And perhaps if we think about what we really, really are craving at that point, we come up with a different answer to the existing unhealthy habit that we've got in place at the moment. So, all of that said, right now we should have cue, routine, reward written down. We should be acknowledging what's going on here. And my last invitation on this habit change and this model would be to write a new sentence. So the words when, leave a space, and that's for the cue. I will, leave a space, that's for the routine. And then the last bit is because it provides me with, leave a space, and that's for the reward. So we should have a sentence now which says, when my cue happens, for example, when it's 3 p.m, I will, a new routine, stand up and go for a 10-minute walk around the block and breathe in the fresh air. And the third piece, because it will make me feel energized and fresh to work again. That kind of thing. Just an example. Yours could be completely different, but have a think about that. We've covered quite a lot of ground. So to recap, habits, at one point they were a choice. We subsequently kept making it, potentially not even thinking about it now, day to day. Second, it takes a while to actually change habits, perhaps longer than what we think, 18 to 254 days, depending on the complexity of the task. 3, we shared a framework for broadly thinking about the brain, and perhaps recognizing that we have an inner chimp, which is sabotaging our healthy habits sometimes and driving change. So putting our human in control as much as possible by setting a plan, a logical plan, and allowing our hard-coded habits in our computer, the third part of the brain, to just make it easier over time. Then we've just shared the framework on habit loops and the cue, routine, reward. So really, you know what you need to do, you just need to do it now. It's not that simple. You're going to have to keep chipping away. Again, the research shows that people that stick to their New Year's resolutions are not the ones who just have plain sailing, go from start to finish absolutely fine. They're the ones that fall off the wagon at some point, but manage to get back on, typically within 7 days. So if you feel like you're coming off track on this new habit, that's okay. Just try and get back on, forgive yourself, and go again. Keep chipping away.